Hi! Okay, so in this video I'm going to be talking about Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. So I'm going to be reading the first chapter, and then I will be doing all of my thoughts at the end. So if you're interested, if you're thinking about reading it, if you read it, and you just want to reminisce, whatever, here's chapter 1. No one who had ever seen Catherine Morland in her infancy would have supposed her born to be a heroine. Her situation in life, the character of her father and mother, her own person and disposition, were all equally against her. Her father was a clergyman, without being neglected or poor, and a very respectful man, though his name was Richard, and he had never been handsome. He had a considerable independence besides 2 good livings, and he was not in the least addicted to locking up his daughters. Her mother was a woman of useful plain sense, with a good temper, and what is more remarkable, with a good constitution. She had 3 sons before Catherine was born, and instead of dying and bringing the latter into the world, as anybody might expect, she still lived to have 6 children more, to see them growing up around her, and to enjoy excellent health herself. A family of 10 children will be always called a fine family, with their heads and arms and legs enough for the number, but the Morlands had little other right to the word, for they were, in general, very plain, and Catherine, for many years of her life, as plain as any. She had a thin, awkward figure, a sallow skin without color, dark, lank hair, and strong features, so much so for her person, and not less unpreposterous for her heroism seemed her mind. She was fond of all boys' plays, and greatly preferred cricket, not merely to dolls, but to the more heroic enjoyments of infancy, nursing a dormouse, feeding a canary bird, or watering a rosebush. Indeed, she had no taste for a garden, and if she gathered flowers at all, it was chiefly for the pleasure of mischief. At least so it was conjectured from her always preferring those which she was forbidden to take. Such were her propensities. Her abilities were quite as extraordinary. She never could learn or understand anything before she was taught, and sometimes not even then, for she was often inattentive and occasionally stupid. Her mother was 3 months in teaching her only to repeat the beggar's petition, and after all, her next sister Sally could say it better than she did. Not that Catherine was always stupid. By no means. She learnt the fable of the hare and many friends as quickly as any girl in England. Her mother wished her to learn music, and Catherine was sure she would like it, for she was very fond of tinkling the keys of the old forlorn spinet. So at 8 years old she began. She learned a year and could not bear it, and Miss Morland, who did not insist on her daughters being accomplished in spite of incapacity or distaste, allowed her to leave off. The day which dismissed the music master was one of the happiest of Catherine's life. Her taste for drawing was not superior, though whenever she could obtain the outside of a letter from her mother or seize upon any other odd piece of paper, she did what else she could in that way, by drawing horses and trees, hens and chickens, all very much like one another. Writing and accounts she was taught by her father, French by her mother, and her proficiency in either was not remarkable. She shirked her lessons in both whenever she could. What a strange, unaccountable character! For with all these symptoms of profligacy, at 10 years old, she had neither a bad heart nor a bad temper, was seldom stubborn, scarcely ever quarrelsome, and very kind to the little ones, with few interruptions of tyranny. She was moreover noisy and wild, hated confinement and cleanliness, and loved nothing so well as the world as rolling down the green slope at the back of the house. Such was Catherine Morland at 10. At 15, appearances were mending. She began to curl her hair and long for balls. Her complexion improved. Her features were softened by plumpness and color. Her eyes gained more animation, and her figure more consequence. Her love of dirt gave way to an inclination for finery, and she grew clean as she grew smart. She had now the pleasure of sometimes hearing her father and mother remark on her personal improvement. "Catherine grows quite a good-looking girl. She is almost pretty today," were words which caught her ears now and then, and how welcome were the sounds. To look almost pretty is an acquisition of higher delight to a girl who has been looking plain the last 15 years of her life than a beauty from her cradle can ever receive. Miss Morland was a very good woman, and wished to see her children everything they ought to be, but her time was so much occupied in lying in and teaching the little ones that her elder daughters were inevitably left to shift for themselves, and it was not very wonderful that Catherine, who had by nature nothing heroic about her, should prefer cricket, baseball, riding on horseback, and running about the country at the age of 14 to books, or at least books of information, for provided that nothing like useful knowledge could be gained from them, provided they were all story and no reflection, she had never any objection to books at all. But from 15 to 17 she was in training for a heroine. She read all such works as heroines must read to supply their memories with those quotations which are so serviceable and so soothing in the vicissitudes of their eventful lives. From Pope she learnt to censor those who, quote, bear about the mockery of woe, unquote, from Gray that, quote, many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its fragrance on the desert air, unquote. From Thompson that it is a delightful task to teach the young idea how to shoot, end quote. And from Shakespeare she gained a great store of information, amongst the rest that, quote, trifles light as air are to the jealous confirmation strong, as proofs of holy writ, end quote. That, quote, the dear beetle which we tread upon in corporal sufferance feels a pang as great as when a giant dies, end quote. And that a young woman in love always looks, quote, like Patience on a monument smiling at grief, end quote. So far her improvement was sufficient, and in many other points she came on exceedingly well, for though she could not write sonnets, she brought herself to read them, and though there seemed no chance of her throwing a whole party into raptures by a prelude on the pianoforte of her own composition, she could listen to other people's performance with very little fatigue. Her greatest proficiency was in the pencil. She had no notion of drawing, not enough even to attempt a sketch of her lover's profile, that she might be detected in the design. There she fell miserably short of the true heroic height. At present she did not know her own poverty, for she had no lover to portray. She had reached the age of 17, without having seen one amiable youth who could call forth her sensibility, without having inspired one real passion, and without having excited even any admiration but what was very moderate and very transient. This was strange indeed, but strange things may be generally accounted for if their cause be fairly searched out. There was not one lord in the neighborhood, no, not even a baronet. There was not one family among their acquaintance who had reared and supported a boy accidentally found at their door, not one young man whose origin was unknown. Her father had no ward, and the squire of the parish no children. But when a young lady is to be a heroine, the perversiveness of 40 surrounding families cannot prevent her. Something must and will happen to throw a hero in her way. Mr. Allen, who owned the chief of the property about Fullerton, the village in Wiltshire where the Morlands lived, was ordered to Bath for the benefit of a gouty constitution, and his lady, a good-humoured woman fond of Miss Morland, and probably aware that if adventures will not befall a young lady in her own village, she must seek them abroad, invited her to go with them. Mr. and Miss Morland were all compliance, and Catherine all happiness. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 1. Now, I know I did like a weird voice. I hope it wasn't annoying. I really hope it wasn't. But like that's the voice I hear when I read this, and it just kind of emerges. I can't help it. It's so funny. So I took a class on Jane Austen when I was abroad in Bath, England, which is where Catherine Morland is going in this story. So when I took the class, I didn't love Jane Austen, but when I think back on it, I love it a lot more than I did at the time. You know, I enjoyed it, but I didn't fully fall in love with it, partly because we read all 5 of her books in like 10 weeks, and it was a lot of reading, and they're very similar. So if you don't know, summary version of Northanger Abbey, it's similar to a lot of her books. You have a girl, she goes to a new place, this time it's Bath, England, and she starts socializing with people, she makes some friends, she falls in love, question mark. So yeah, anyway, she goes in the place, finds a girl. That just made it like a lesbian Jane Austen thing. You know, some people think Emma is like a lesbian story, so let me know if you think that below. Please let me know. But anyway, so she finds a friend that's a girl, and she meets a boy. That's the summary version. That's as good as I can give you. But it's really, really Jane Austen. It's her first book. So Northanger Abbey is her first book, published in, I think, 1811, something like that. And it is hilarious. She's really, really making fun of people in this book. And you might not have realized, I hope you did by the way I read it, that it's supposed to be humorous. Her use of language and her, basically, it's very meta. The story is very meta. If you like gothic horror, I think you'll love this because it's basically commentary on gothic horror. And she's like, yeah, so this girl, she's supposed to be the main character, but she's really boring. And she's kind of stupid. And what are we going to do with that? It's just hilarious. I'm like, Jane, I love you, Jane Austen. I do. I think it's so funny. So I think this one's really good if you like that kind of, like, you know, meta. Like, if you're a literary person, I feel like you might like this one. I don't think it's the best of her works. I plan to do this for all of her works, though, so if you're interested in any of them and you're like, well, let me hear you read the first chapter and give me your thoughts, I will definitely be doing that for all of them. I'm doing them in order in which they were published, so I'm going to start with Northanger Abbey. So I just want to say it's hilarious. Even from the beginning, the first line, no one who had ever seen Catherine Morland in her infancy would have supposed her born to be a heroine. Also, every time I say heroine, I feel like I'm saying the drug, and I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I literally looked it up to see how it's pronounced, and I still feel like I'm pronouncing it wrong. Also, I'm talking at like 3 times speed, so you can hit the settings, slow me down. I had some caffeine. But you also can see her making fun of like books in a way, like being very meta, where she's saying like this really is a commentary on books and writing at the time, and she's talking about he had not, and she's talking about the dad, and he was not in the least addicted to locking up his daughters. Okay. Like, there's a lot of things like that, and it's like, the mom didn't die in childbirth, and it's basically just, like, all these books around this time were very similar, and, like, had this, like, big adventure story, and she's like, or we could write about everyday women. Like, that's not crazy. Like, it doesn't have to be this crazy adventure story of someone locked in an attic. We could just write about a boring character. I don't know, just saying. So I think she's hilarious, and I love her commentary, and, stay tuned. The next one will be Sense and Sensibility. Thank you. Oh, and subscribe if you would like to see more. It means a lot to me. Thank you. My laptop just died, so that's how I'm doing. Oh gosh. Okay. So it's charging. This is good. This is what I wanted. I'll get a drink of Coke. Do I sound like one of those Coke commercials where it's like, you know, when they drink it? That's how I feel. I forgot my iPad was on 5%, so it has died. And I am here, talking to a camera while I wait for it to load. Hopefully you don't lose my place. Oh, I hope you don't mind, but I thought I'd sing you a song. I'm probably tone deaf, so please sing along. I know you don't know the words, 'cause I'm making it up. But I believe in you, and that we can build a fort. Oh my gosh, okay. It's still charging. So, how was your day? Was it good? I hope it was good. I had a good day. Solid 6 out of 10. Okay, that's not a good day. I had an average day. It was, yeah, I kind of felt dumb in class. Oh good, it's turning on. I twisted my ankle when I was walking back in class after a break, but no one looked at me. Which is both sad and good, you know? Really hurt, actually. But I'm fine now. I have an obsession with Snoopy. So I got this for Valentine's. Oh, that is way too close on my face. I got this for Valentine's Day. Because I think my dog looks like Snoopy. It makes me happy. So anyway, I have that up there. Okay. iPad is back on. Opening the book back up. Let me get in the voice of Jane Austen. Whoa. What do you mean I'm offline? Oh, it's loading. It's loading. 1%. It's loading. Okay.